Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Nick McDonald, and I'm somebody who's been in education for a while, and I'm seeking answers as to why education is the way that it is and how it can be better. So I've been in industry for 20 odd years, and I switched to teaching and found some surprises that may resonate with some of you when I went into teaching, um, which I found both interesting and frustrating. But I'm still in teaching now and enjoying it. So that's me. Mike, over to you.
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Michael Bird. Unlike Nick, I've not worked in engineering. I've worked in education now for over 25 years in a variety of contexts in a variety of fields. I love working with teachers. I think teachers are the backbone of our society. But I'm not actually I don't have huge confidence in the direction that education is taking right now. This is one of the reasons why we've started the teacherlearning.org website, is to try to explore, try to find other people who think like us, how education might need to change. So that's me. So we're starting a series of podcasts about some of the ideas that we think are important. We're not trying to assume that all of these ideas are comprehensive, but I think they warrant some exploration. And so the first podcast that we've got for you today actually is meant to discuss a post that was made on our blog, teacherlearning.org, The Illusion of Control. Nick, do you want to start us off with some questions about that? Or
Yes, I enjoyed reading that. A lot of it resonated with my experience. So when we're talking about the illusion of control, you've used the metaphor in that article. You've linked it to control in the classroom, which I think is completely relevant for teachers. But I want to ask you the question: do you think, firstly, do you think teachers and educators understand this metaphor of the illusion of control? When you're trying to teach something, you have you prepare a lesson, you go into that lesson, and then things happen in that lesson which make you revise your plan live. You have to adapt to what actually comes back from the class, and
yeah.
by imposing control over the class, you can often lose the class. Is it well understood, do you think, that that is a valid metaphor that we can then use in the article? Is that what you find?
Well, I think so. In the teachers that I talk to, they often talk about the fact that their best laid plans, best laid schemes, that they try to implement in classroom, often change and often have to be modified. But what concerns me is that often teachers sort of evaluate this in relation to success stroke failure. And I'm not sure that's right. And sometimes in an effort to bring about a smooth transfer of intention, i.e. teachers' intention in the classroom, with what the pupils actually end up doing. There is a tendency, I think, for teachers, supported sometimes by institutional controlling measures, to be more prescriptive or to be more controlling in the way that they, define how pupils need to be, need to work, need to, exercise their intellect or their practice in relation to the things that they're learning. My concern, though, and I know that teachers also know this, though they don't always admit it, is that actually asserting a stronger level of prescription and control over classes often brings about the very opposite of what you intend. You might create a mirage of compliant children all sitting in serried ranks getting on with their work, but what you're also doing at the same time is that you're probably storing up all sorts of divergent practices, boredom, resentment in the minds of the pupils, and that will of itself be a problem.
Right. Okay. So, so teachers, I think what you're saying is teachers essentially do naturally understand that. They know when the class is starting to maybe find alternative activities or engagement in something else that may be more interesting, and that might include, uh, some poking someone or making a paper airplane or something, or
Exactly, exactly.
all of these other activities, or just engagement in some other part of the work, even.
Exactly. And I can understand a teacher, who's losing a class, i.e., I can see that they're talking, they've got their phones out, they're passing notes to each other, they're not engaging in the work. I can see that one school of thought might be, okay, I need therefore to come down really hard, on these pupils, and therefore exercise my authority. Often when I hear that, I see the sort of last desperate stand of a teacher that's actually already lost the class, and that this is a reaction that's fated to bring
Well,
about the
that's
same.
certainly, I think we've all experienced that at some point in
Yeah.
our careers. What drives that, do you think?
Well, I think it's because there is a sort of culture, I think, here, that being a good teacher requires control, requires strong and forceful assertion. There is still, I think, in the DNA of our educational organizations, this kind of rather Victorian sort of school of thought that schools are basically houses of correction, and that if too much misrule or too much misconduct is going on in schools, it's because we're too soft and cuddly, and therefore the correct response is to come down hard. I mean, you can hear this attitude in the press, you can hear this attitude amongst a lot of lay commentators, amongst pundits, amongst politicians as well. And this, I think, drives and influences that choice. But if teachers were honest with themselves,
Yeah,
they would know that's the worst thing to do when
yes,
you're
okay,
confronted with a tricky class, with a difficult
right.
class.
Well, given that a lot of people who drive education policy have either spent very little time, or in top government cases, no time at all, teaching in classes, how has this same approach then, because it does appear that this same approach is being used by government to teachers or to
Yeah.
educators?
Well,
How
actually, the pattern is bigger than simply the reforms to teacher education, teacher training, the ITT market review, which is talked about in the blog post. Actually, there are a number of fields in which the government currently is trying to do exactly this approach, asserting its control over things. They did it with the budget, the mini budget, the Kwasi Kwarteng's abortive mini budget, which resulted in completely the opposite of what it intended to achieve. But also, actually, I'm hearing about the immigration policy. The strong, hard, prescriptive, assertive words that have come from various foreign secretaries over the last 3 or 4 years sounds all very good, sounds all sort of very prescriptive and controlling. I'm sure the right-wing press would be applauding it. Yet what has it actually achieved? Exactly the opposite of what it has set out. Now, I'm just thinking that the same is true of these reforms to teacher education. They are trying to blueprint and prescribe to the absolute fine-grained detail what must be taught in a teacher education curriculum, and that providers, individual trainers, are to be judged good or bad in relation to their level of compliance in this. And for me, that's just it's poor policy making, but B, it's just destined to create the very opposite of what they want, which is control.
Yeah,
and prescription and
compliance
compliance
is the exact opposite of competence. So that's one of the major issues, isn't it? Compliance is the opposite of competence.
Well, I mean, yeah, you see, I think this is a plague that is upon a lot of educational sort of houses at the moment, is the tension, the battle between compliance and competence, because a lot of regulatory organizations who come in to inspect or to external examine or consultancy roles will often check compliance. And if you're compliant, well, then the assumption, the meaning that's often attached to that is that you're good. In other words, everything's fine. Whereas actually, being compliant is often the very lowest denominator, and being good is something very different from being compliant, very different, but it's often confused. So you're right.
So why? I just, well, there's two things I don't really understand. Um, I mean, it seems obvious to me as a teacher. It seems obvious to. It seems pretty clear. But why is it not obvious to those in charge? And secondly, what are we going to do about it?
Well, I know, I agree. You see, I think that there is unfortunately too much influence on some of our politicians by pundits who really don't know anything. I think that there's a very surface level reasoning behind some of these policies, which is simply, superficially influenced by culture warriors. And actually that I question hugely, because I just think that's iconoclastic. It's just not respectful at all. Now, I think that there is, though, a deeper and more profound sort of engagement in these questions, and in my experience, that's alive and well. Actually, it is. It's just that the conversation or the communication hasn't yet sort of come out or proliferated into the sort of standard media channels. Certainly in social media, it seems to be doing the rounds. But again, it's like people saying this out of the corner of their mouths rather than out loud. And what does that seem to signify? That seems to signify that there's a sort of a dogma, that people have to follow, and that if you don't, then you're a heretic. There's something almost religious about it.
And it's not that there's a huge amount. It's not that there's necessarily anything wrong with anything that anybody says. It's just that if you don't understand what it is you're doing or apply it in the right context, then effectively you are going backwards. You're mistreating adults. Who then mistreat children, and the education system isn't then fit for purpose.
Well, that's it, because I mean, it comes, just to come around the full circle. I think it's absolutely fundamental that teachers are sort of liberated from too much prescription and too much control, so that they can exercise their own powers of critical reflection on what they do, because it's only through that they will be able to see the wood for the trees.
Isn't that the definition of a profession?
Indeed,
isn't that the whole point?
Exactly. It's all about professionalizing teachers, not giving them levels of prescription and control, which just warps, their judgment, warps what they see. Because it's never clear when you're given a prescription where, when, how, and if to apply those prescriptions. And a lot of people will just become robots and just apply it without any thought or without any reflection at all. So I'm just on the side of those critical reflection, and the need for that in any kind of exhortation to follow a prescription.
So these sorts of prescriptions, the ones you get from the chemist, which I just happen to have in front of me here, these medical prescriptions, these are different. These are things where you need to look at the evidence and then you apply that theory from the evidence of a medical trial to the people with the similar symptoms that have been dealt with in the medical trial. However, prescription in a socio-cultural setting like a school or any organization, actually, this doesn't just apply to schools, is detrimental to the whole thing. So is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, it's interesting that you make the analogy with the medical science, because, you know, I think education discourse has become, you know, influenced heavily by medical, discourse in the last sort of 15 years or so, 10 or 15 years. And some of it I have no problem with at all, you know, because, you know, if you think about the idea of a teacher as a clinical practitioner, you know, I that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, because it requires teachers to get as much information and knowledge and evidence as they possibly can to inform their judgments. No problem with that at all. But it's rather different, though, for a teacher to simply ignore, you know, the evidence and the information that's in front of them in favor of just do this because it works and it's been proven to work in these randomized control trials. Just do this. It doesn't matter, you know, what actually happens. It will be a success, and that's I think is very worrying. That's not
and
how
it's out of
doctors
context.
work.
It's completely out of context as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not how doctors work.
Well, I think we should explore this further, because the question for me is, what can we do? What can we do? We must do that. And I think we probably need to explore that a lot further in the next videos as they come up over the next
And
few
blogs.
weeks. And the blog and the blog posts, yes. So please keep an eye on teacherlearning.org for updates. Please respond and comment on the blog posts you see on the website. That's certainly a great start. So thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you on the next post.
Yeah. See you later, everybody. Thanks, Nick.